Well, this is Baruch Fleischman here at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel. And if you're Jewish and you would like to have a feeling for how it is exactly that you got to the place where you're at right now, like say, who are your ancestors? What did they go through? Well, how far back can we actually go? Well, the Jewish people, starting from Abraham, are almost 3,900 years old. We've been through a lot. But our recent history and our multiplication of the size of our people has brought us to a place we're at right now. Now, over here, we're talking about the 16th and the 17th centuries, which is the 1500s, according to the common way of counting, and the 1600s. It's entitled Kabbalists and Kabbalistic Centers. So we're going to read what they have to say here, go over the map a little bit. Here's Spain. Now understand that in the 1500s, really, and Portugal as well, they were Judenrein. They had gotten rid of all their Jews. Either they forcibly converted them, they were tricked in the case of Portugal, but in Spain they weren't tricked. Many Jews remained behind and took on conversion. So they became like what they call new Christians. But you don't see a lot of activity here because there's no Jews left. Then we see that there's activity all over Europe in many different places, and we're going to drill down into that and take a look at that. But before that, let's, and here we are, just give you an idea. Once again, it's the Ottoman Empire. This is the land of Israel. Here's Russia up here. Poland at that time was a very large place. Poland, Lithuania. So we're going to look a little bit more at this. I'll try to bring the map down, the camera down lower so that everybody could see it. Okay. So here are a list of noted Kabbalists who more or less escaped Spain and Portugal, and settled in a place in Israel called Tzfat. Now, if you've ever been to Tzfat, Tzfat is on the top of a mountain. This is the highest place in that area. So, how the trade went through Tzfat is, you think about a mountain that you have to climb up, you have to climb down. But actually, there were roads that led you into Lebanon and further north from Tzfat that would bring goods through Tzfat, and Tzfat was up high, so therefore it was like a fortress town as well. So somehow these Spanish Portuguese Jews wound up in this city called Tzfat, which had a heyday for about 2 generations or so. It was very interesting. Now here are some of the noted Kabbalists of Tzfat. Now they pronounce it in English, they always write it Safed, but it's Tzfat. Or in Ashkenaz, it's Tzfas. So first of all, there was Yosef Caro. Now Caro is a Spanish Jewish name. It means precious or dear, wealthy, something like that, but probably dear. Then there was Solomon Shlomo Halevi Alkabetz. There was Moses Cordovero, which is the Ramak, Rabbi Moshe Cordovero. David Ibn Zemero. So these are people with Spanish, Portuguese, Arabic names. And then is Reb Shlomo de Turia. Now that was the original Kabbalists that were in Tzfat. But then came along the Ariya Kodesh. So they call him the Divine Rabbi Isaac. And this was a group of disciples which are called the Cubs of the Ari. He's called the Ari because his name was Rabbi, it's just the letters, Rabbi Isaac Ashkenazi. He was an Ashkenaz, not Sephardic. All of these people are Spanish Jews. But I know from other sources that the Ari spoke Ladino, which is a Spanish Jewish language. So you have here in his cubs were Haim Vital, of course, the most important. He was on the right. If you see the Ari looking this way, he'd be to the right. Yosef Ibn Tabul, Samuel Shmuel de Useda, Jonathan Yonatan Sagiz, and Yosef Arzin. These are names associated with the Kabbalah and the spread that came from the Holy Ari. Now let's take a look and let's see how I can do this. Let me pull this forward. And I'll pull the book up a little bit. Let's see. Just a little bit up. So he writes like this. That helps a little bit. The persecutions of 1391, because what happened at the expulsion of 1492 actually began in an enormous anti-Jewish pogrom that took place in 1391 throughout the Iberian Peninsula, in Spain that is, and the subsequent events which kept getting worse and worse and worse for the Jews, culminating in the expulsion of the Jews from Spain in the year 1492. This made a deep impression on the Kabbalists of the period and resulted in far-reaching changes in Kabbalistic thought. Now, that's interesting. What does he know about Kabbalistic thought? What was it like before the expulsion? What was it like afterwards? Now, Spain is the origin, it is the centerpiece of where Kabbalah flourished. The problem of redemption was heightened, particularly because hopes that the Messiah was supposed to come in 1492. This is based on a passage in Job, and he gives the site reference here, 38:7, when the morning stars sang together. Now, the numerical, the gematria of this value of the word bron, for sung, is 1492. Proved baseless. The Messianic, it seems like when there's oppression, then the Jews, we look for the Messiah. But when we think we found the Messiah and the proof of it, that's a mistake. Messiah will be the Messiah, will come when he comes, and the Messiah will do what he does. He doesn't need our predictions. But understand the circumstances of that time. This was after 1391, when there was a mass pogrom set by the church throughout all of Spain, and many Jews were forcibly converted. So I'm supposed to have a Spanish name in my family, and I mention it to some people, and they tell me that, there's a family from our people called Gueta. I thought the name was Agueda. It was probably Aguado, but who knows? But, it gets passed around because our people came from Lithuania. That's a long way from Spain. At any rate, I looked up this place, Gueta. So Gueta then was called Huete. Today it's called Huete. It was called Hueta then, and now it's called Huete. In the year 1390, there were 20,000 Jews in Gueta. In the year 1392, 1393, there was 0. What happened? All of them were either murdered or converted. The messianic frustration and the catastrophe of expulsion precipitated a soul-searching by the Kabbalists. 2 books by anonymous authors, published about the year 1500, were particularly significant. Now, these are Sfarim that I really don't know. Sefer HaMeshiv, what is that? It's a commentary on the 5 books of Moses. And Kaf HaKetoris, it's the cup of incense, a commentary on the book of Psalms. Now, the authors attempted to highlight the apocalyptic meaning of every word in the Bible. There were 70 modes of expounding the Torah. That's according to the book of Numbers. And each generation had its own mode. Thus, it was expulsion and redemption that occupied their generation, proving to be a particularly dominant theme in HaFakatoret, which expressed the new Weltanschauung of Tzfat Kabbalists and was founded on Messianic eschatology. Now, in the Kabbalistic center of Tzvat, outstanding personalities were Rabbi Moshe ben Yaakov Cordovero, author of Tomer Devorah, and many others. Eliyahu ben Moses de Vidas, author of Reishis Chachma. Elazar ben Moses Azikri, author of Sefer Haredim. Haim ben Yosef Vital, that is Rabbi Haim Vital, author of the Sefer Shari Kedusha. Yosef ben Ephraim Karo, author also of the Shulchan Aruch and the famous Beis Yosef, one of the great halachists of all time, who apparently met Shlomo Molchel, Kabbalist and Suda Messiah, in Salonika, and was so deeply impressed by him that when Molchel was martyred at the stake in Mantua in 1532, now understand that Mantua, we called it, I've seen this before, Mantova, which means the good mountain. Today it's called Mantura, and you see this is a place where the Kabbalistic printing press was located. Here we see that Shlomo Molchel was burnt to death there. Caro also expressed a desire to meet as a martyr's death. Caro wrote a mystical diary called Magid Mesharim, in which he recorded messages revealed to him by a heavenly mentor. He learned, which is called a Magid, he learned with a Malach. He says a heavenly mentor. I would say a heavenly medium. Another Kabbalist living in Tzfat was Shlomo ben Moshe Levi Alkabetz, born in 1505 in Salonika. Now it's very important that Salonika, for many years, and it's this time particularly, which is in Greece, was a major Jewish center, that many Spanish Jews went there. He studied with the greatest of its rabbis, Yosef Tatsatek. Around 1535, he settled in Tzfat, where he died in the year 1584. Al-Kabetz is the author of the Piyut Lecha Dodi, a hymn welcoming the Sabbath, the Shabbos, that is woven out of strands of Kabbalistic imagery expressing messianic yearning for redemption. Now, another personality active in the Holy Land was the Hebrew poet Yisroel ben Moshe Nachara. Born in Damascus, he settled in Gaza around 1587, serving as a rabbi until his death. Now, Gaza was a nice place at one time. The outstanding Kabbalist of the 16th century, though, was Isaac ben Shlomo Luria, known as Ha'ari, the lion. He was born in 1534, this is an important date, and was active in Sfat from about 1569 until his death in 1572. So he's got it more accurately. He lived there for 3 years. So I always say it a little bit differently the way it was told to me, that he lived there for 2 years. Here he lived there for 3 years. Maybe it's a little over 2. So at any rate, Luria's originality is in his pioneering conception of the theoretical aspect of Kabbalah and its permeation with messianic eschatology. In Tzfat, he gathered around him a group of disciples who subsequently expanded, and propagated his teachings. And I am the lowest of the lowest students of the Ari, but I love the words of the Ari. Mid-16th century Tzfat was like 13th century Cherona, as a center of theoretical Kabbalah. Now, here are the centers of Kabbalah that existed in Europe way back when. Let's see, and they're all over. Let's see if I could find number 1. Here's number 1. Now, number 1, and I'll try to get the idea of where things are pointing also, because they're off to the side. So he says, let's get it back on the screen. There we go. Now look where we're at. Here's the Black Sea. Here's the Crimea. Here's Poland. Poland and Lithuania are a mass up in this area. So he writes here, end of the 16th century, that's the later part of the 1500s, the Kabbalah reaches Poland. Aryeh Loeb, Preluk, Abraham Cohen, Rappaport, Reb Shimshon, and Reb Nassan Shapiro all learned here. Number 14, in the year 1498, that's really very early in the development here. Moshe ben Yehuda of Kiev writes the Shushan Sodot. Sodot means secrets. We're down here now. In the mid-16th century, and where are we talking about? We're pointing over here towards Egypt, maybe Cairo or Alexandria. He says in the 16th century, mid-16th century, the 1550s, let's say, Meir ben Ezekiel Yechezkel Ibn Gabai, author of Avodat HaKodesh. Here's another one, number 4. The mid-16th century again, exiled Spanish Kabbalists start to become active in this place called, they call here Safed, which is Tzfat. Number 5, back over to Egypt again. 1572, Kabbalist Center, formed, headed by the Ari and his disciples over here. The Ari grows in that place. Now, number 6 is around here somewhere. Let me see where it is. I can never remember where these things are exactly. Here's 4, 5, 3, and here's 6. In the year 1515, so you see how close this is to the expulsion. He says, active Kabbalists, and he's pointing here at Jerusalem. Avraham ben Eliezer Halevi, Yosef ben Avraham ibn Zaya, author of Even HaShoham, 1538, and in the 1538, and She'erit Yosef, 1549. From the years 1630 to 60, Kabbalist Center formed, headed by Yaakov Zema, Nassan ben Reuben, Spior, which is probably Spire, but it sounds Ashkenazic, I don't know, and Meir Poppers. Yehuda ben Moshe Albotini, there it is, Albotini, who writes the Sulam HaAliyah, which is a sefer that, very deeply Kabbalistic sefer of number sequences. Number 7 is over here. In the end of the 16th century, Israel Sarug, so that's Rebbe, it's called I see it as the Ri Sarug, disseminates Kabbalah and teachings of the Ari. I love the Ri Sarug. In the 17th century, Yosef Shlomo de Melgado, he's called the Rofet, he was apparently a doctor, Yasha, goes to Poland. So here he is, he's here in this route up here into Poland. Number 9, Yosef Taitzazik, Haim ben Yaakov, Obadiah de Musal, and Isaac Shani are active here. Now, where is this active here? Salonika. Now, one of the things that I read from this same Dr. Haim, I should make sure I got his name, is Haim Beinhart, thank you. Haim Beinhart was that Rabbi Yosef Karo, the author of the Shulchan Aruch and the Beis Yosef, had a lot of relatives in Salonika. And the main center that he saw of his writings, where he wanted to disseminate his writings, was in Salonika. Going on to number 10, where is number 10? 10. Up at the top. He says, Shabbatai Sheftel Horowitz. Now we know this name Horowitz is a large name. He says in Prague, writes the Shefetal. Number 11. In the first half of the 16th century, Eliyahu, that's Elijah, Menahem, Hayan, Halfan was active here. And he points where? To Venice, Venezia. Number 12. Abraham ben Solomon Trevis Sarfati was active here. Where are we again? In this place called Mantua. Or we'll see Mantua. Mantua, which we called Montara, or Mantova. Now, instead of Mantua, it was Mantova. So let's go on, number 13. Where is 13? 13, 13, 13. Here we go. First half of the 16th century, there were Kabbalists in Rakanadi. Oh, Rakanadi is a famous name in Kabbalah. In the first half of the 16th century, Yaakov Israel Finzi was active here in this place called Rakanadi. In the number 14, in 1575, Mordechai Dato was active here. It looks like it's like Naples, something like that, in southern Italy. Now, eventually, the Spanish took over the southern part of Italy, and all the Jews were in big trouble. Number 15, in the mid-16th century, Avraham ben Yaakov Saba and Shimon Lavi, author of Ketem Paz, were active here. Where is the here? The here is in Fez in Morocco. Then we're going on to number 16. Number 16 is the first half of the 16th century again. Yosef ben Moshe al-Lashkar writes a book called Tzafnat Panea, referring to Yosef Atzadik, concept bris perhaps. Number 17, and we're coming now to the end of our tour of the 15th and 16th centuries. He says the first half of the 16th century, that's the 1500s, 50s, Berkio ben Mushulam Kaufman was active at the end of the 16th, active here. Now let's see, where is the here? Once again, this is in a place called for Mantua. Once again, Montova. And 16th century, Menachem Azaria Defanu, also active in this place. And this is a place where you saw that someone was burned at the stake over there, that Shlomo Molchan was burnt at the stake over there. We also see that there were printing presses there, Jewish printing presses. Now, number 18, the first half, Naftali, and he's pointing here to Amsterdam. Now remember, there was also a diaspora of Jews that came from Portugal and fared around this way and eventually came to Amsterdam. Now supposedly this is how Jews also came to Lithuania, because Lithuania was much further away from the church. You have to understand that when Jews came out of, escaped Spain or Portugal, and they wound their way to Amsterdam, the church had people in the synagogue looking to see who showed up. And if you showed up and your wife and your family were still back in Spain, they're in a lot of trouble. So therefore, people stopped there when they could, but they moved on away from where the church was powerful. And that place was the next port down to the line is over here in Lithuania, over this way in those ports there. And that's how a lot of Jews came. The Jews originally came to Spain, to Lithuania, along with many scholars. Now here's number 18, which we said, and this is where we finished off, is that this is Amsterdam, which became a center as well. And that's the shir here with Dr. Haim Beinhart. You want to know who you are, how you got here? Well, we went through all kinds of changes, constant changes, but the core of us, our Torah, has remained, and we are still strong and active. This is Baruch Fleischman.